political parties as it relates to what the president did and did not do in the State of the Union address last night. I happen to be one of those people who believe that the State of the Union matters. I think it's important. I think presidents of both parties have really ruined it over the last 10 years. It's become such a partisan speech. It's become a political speech, not a State of the Union speech. You've heard me say this before. It is a State of the Union. It is not a State of the Government address. It is not a State of the political parties address. It is a State of the Union address. I think there were some things that the president got right. I think there were definitely some things that he swung on and missed. And I think there were some things that were left unsaid that I think were also very important. But I want to start where the president started. I thought he got off to a very good start in his speech by exhorting Congress and America to meet the moment, and then applied that specifically to standing for freedom with Ukraine. Take a listen.
Now it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons it needs to defend itself. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers.
So I thought that was a very powerful start for the president. It got him off on the right footing, I think, and I think it was a good unity portion of the program. And then everything spun. It went from a moment of unity, talking about freedom, talking about American leadership in the world, talking about what the U.S. has to do and what others are willing to do in the fight for freedom. And I thought all of those things he did very well. And then everything spun sideways. He spent the remainder, almost all of the remainder, focusing on the former president, mentioned former President Trump over 20 times during that middle section of the speech. Again, state of the politics, state of the campaign, state of the presidential race. That's not the time or place to do that. And I was disappointed in that because if you're going to demand and command the attention of the American people, you better treat it right. And you better treat it for all the American people, not just those that are on your political side of the aisle, not those that you think are close enough that they might vote for you side of the aisle, not just those that you can poke at for political posturing. You better show respect to the American people. And I think the president failed on that front for a number of reasons, including starting 30 minutes late. Now, State of the Unions can run a few minutes late. We get that. You're getting a lot of people into the Capitol. There's a lot of security going on around that. You have to get corralling the members of Congress to sit down is an act in and of itself. But 30 minutes is, unless he was in the Situation Room dealing with a nuclear threat, that's just one of those where you're not respecting anyone. You're not respecting the American people who are sitting down to listen to you. You're not respecting the networks and the broadcasters and people covering it who are giving up valuable airtime, advertising time, to say this is important, this matters to the country. And so you have to respect that. I thought the president had some big misses in those middle sections of the speech, and I always look at it in sections because that's how those speeches are crafted. And whether you can transition in and out of those is often a test of a good State of the Union address. Of course, there was some heckling from Marjorie Taylor Greene, wildly inappropriate, and I will actually be the equal opportunity offender on that one. Marjorie Taylor Greene was way out of line, no question. And the president knew exactly what he was doing. He baited her. He goaded her. She took the bait. He was ready for the response. He had his pin. And all of that was incredibly offensive to me and should have been offensive to every American. That both of them would choose to use the death of a young woman for a political moment. is wildly inappropriate, especially in the well of the people's house in our nation's capital. I thought that was a tremendous miss. I also thought it was wildly inappropriate of the president to go after the Supreme Court justices who are attending this after having been away for a while, because they're not supposed to be in the political process. They're not supposed to be there. And so they come out of respect for the office of the president, out of respect for the institution and what the Constitution demands in an address for the State of the Union. And then to be used as a political prop and to be cajoled or bullied or however you want to frame it based on some of their rulings, which are not supposed to be political. If you heard any of our conversations earlier this week, conversations between Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, that you just do not question that they're going at it from different angles, but they're doing it to get to the right ruling, not based on blue and red and Democrat and Republican, liberal, conservative. That's not the job. And so I thought it was inappropriate for the president to go down that path, to make that so political. I will make a prediction for next year, and that is that the Supreme Court justices will maybe only be represented by the Chief Justice next year. There's no reason for them to be in that situation and being cajoled and bullied that way as part of a political posturing during election year. Wildly inappropriate. Now, the president ended his speech in a strong space. I thought this was actually one of his better moments of the night because he wasn't going through a laundry list of programs that won't get funded and can't get done as part of political promises. Instead, he shared a little bit of a vision of America, and that was good. It was like, okay, we can get on board. Take a listen.
I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserves to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. You need America, the land of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done. I see a future where defending democracy, you don't diminish it. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, not take them away. I see a country for all Americans, and I will always be president for all Americans, because I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people. You're the reason we've never been more optimistic about our future than I am now. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are.
I love that framing of we've never fully lived up to the principles we profess to believe, and we've never walked away from them either. I thought that was the best moment for the president last night. Again, many saying it was far too political, much more hammer, far less olive branch. You can get into the details of the specific programs and the costs and all of those things. We'll do that a little more later on. Niall Stanage is going to join us from News Nation coming up at 2:35. We'll do a deeper dive into what the takeaways are and what comes next as it relates to that. But I think the important thing for all of us to remember in all of this is the thing that matters most is not the state of the politics, not the state of the politicians, not the state of the government, but the state of the union, which begins with we the people.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
They say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. You may not have that kind of time for weatherization, energy efficiency, and appliance rebates, but we do. Dominion Energy's ThermWise program has experts who know where and how to save money. They help homeowners and businesses find simple ways to conserve natural gas and rebates through upgrades that may help to save even more. We put our energy into helping you conserve it, so you can spend your 10,000 hours becoming an expert in what matters to you. Start with a home energy plan at thermwise.com.
The Cougars are fighting for their best chance in the Big Dance.
BYU's displayed its resiliency throughout this campaign.
The Big 12 tournament is days away, and then it's the NCAA tournament. Saturday, it's BYU, Oklahoma State. Pregame is at 6 and tip-off at 7 on Utah's legacy home for the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
What would you say if I told you you could get a free furnace? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and I hope you'd at least say, tell me more. Now, before you get too excited, let me explain how this works and why we do our free furnace sale. We feel like we've got the best HVAC techs around and we want to keep them. But the only way we can do that is if they're working and providing for their families, so we set money aside for this free furnace sale. We're only able to give you this great deal because you're helping us keep our guys busy. It's actually great if you've been thinking about replacing both your furnace and air conditioner, because when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services by March 31st to schedule a free estimate. One of our HVAC supervisors will come to your home and explain all the details. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services today and schedule your free estimate. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Are you looking to get a COVID-19 booster to stay healthy this cold and flu season? If you join the Beehive study, you'll have the chance to receive up to $550 for getting a booster and completing weekly COVID tests and brief surveys about your health. Don't want to get a COVID-19 booster? That's okay too. You can still join the Beehive study and receive up to $550 for completing the weekly COVID tests and surveys. Help advance research at the University of Utah while taking care of yourself this season. Call 801-203-0320 or email beehivestudy@utah.edu to learn more. You can also visit the study website at beehivestudy.com.
Planning for spring at Lowe's means big savings on outdoor power equipment, and Lowe's knows nothing feels better than free. Buy one select Ego string trimmer, leaf blower, or mower kit. Get one select 56-volt battery free. That's up to a $299 value. Power through spring with Ego, the #1 rated brand in cordless outdoor power. Because Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid through 4/3 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Hey everyone, it's Joe Montana. Spreading the word about pneumococcal pneumonia, a potentially serious bacterial lung disease that can be life-threatening. If you're 65 or older like me, you're at increased risk. So, what's the game plan? A strong defense. Pneumococcal pneumonia can strike at any time in any season, so you shouldn't wait to help protect yourself. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist about vaccination today and learn more at knowpneumonia.com. That's KNOW pneumonia.com.
Sponsored by Pfizer.
Held over due to popular demand. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, today through Sunday. Utah State Fair Park. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, today through Sunday. Utah State Fair Park. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Utah State Fair Park. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Utah State Fair Park. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Utah State Fair Park. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Utah State Fair Park. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Utah State Fair Park. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America, but this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Smartin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, 3 police agencies were involved in an incident this morning that left a car burglary suspect dead in Riverton. Second, a new study says even moderate consumption of diet soda can increase your risk of atrial fibrillation. Third, climate change making it harder to produce maple syrup in the early spring, even changing its flavor. Right now, 36 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Of course, it's been a big political week. Super Tuesday happened this week, and one of the things that everyone has been keeping their eye on post Super Tuesday, not only would things consolidate as everyone had predicted around the repeat performance of the current president and the former president for 2024, but also The group No Labels has said that post Super Tuesday, they would be gathering and making a decision about their plans for 2024, if they are going to indeed field a unity ticket of some sort. And someone who's also been keeping their eye on that, Matt Welch, editor-at-large at Reason.com, joins us on the program, has a few thoughts on that. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Thanks very much for having me back.
All right, so as we look at things moving forward, it is now officially time for No Labels. And what's your sense? I know there was a meeting today with that, an online Zoom-style meeting. I think about 600 folks weighing in there. What's the consensus there? What's the path forward there?
They've unanimously or near unanimously decided to keep deciding. They're interested in looking, and sometime between now and around March 14th, they are going to be looking for candidates. Right now, they don't have any. And every time that they float one as a trial balloon, which they've been doing every week for a long time now, including as recently as yesterday, Kirsten Sinema, right, after she decided that she wasn't running for re-election, took her about 3 hours to say, nope, don't want it. So there's a series of people who have decided, for reasons that are pretty rational if you look at it, that they don't want to do it. Because part of the No Labels shtick, remember, No Labels is chaired by Joe Lieberman. It's always had people like John Huntsman and Joe Manchin, kind of centristy politicians who've been in it forever. And so they want like establishment type of people, and but yet establishment type people to run for a third party, which is a very un-establishment type of thing to do. And in an election that's, neck and neck right now and very polarized. So that's not a very attractive thing for various possible candidates to get. So they're going to have a dickens of a time finding candidates that have any kind of name recognition. And even if they did get like a Nikki Haley, which they can't because she won't do it, and there's sore loser laws that prevent her from running in many states. Even if they could, there's polling to suggest that she wouldn't do all that great either. So they're in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah, the challenge there is who do they get on that ticket. I'm one who loves the idea of having that, having a choice and recognizing something from the center left to center right. But the question will always be, who do you actually get to do it, to stand up and go? And I don't know, Matt, if this was going to be the moment where you were going to announce that you and I are going to be the unity ticket for 2024 and really set it all on fire.
I'm even less interested than Joe Manchin at this point.
Because you are a smart man.
Not even going to float a trial balloon. Power is ugly. I mean, just as a side note, just think of all the people that you've seen go to Washington who you had high hopes for, who have become caricatures of themselves as because they know it's the only way to stay in power. It's a grotesque period or a grotesque process, and I don't want any part of it.
Yeah, I remember during a campaign helping a candidate, and the candidate was asked the question, tell me about how concerned you are for the welfare of your soul. And it's kind of the point that you were just making, Matt, that so many go back there with high hopes and high expectations, but the incentives are so perverse and so reversed in terms of standing on principle and doing those kinds of things. It makes it tough for anyone to be able to come out the other side of Washington, D.C. With at least the grounding of those principles and virtues and values that you walked in with.
I mean, think about a congressman who announced in the last week or two that he wasn't running for re-election, Ken Buck of Colorado. He's a perfectly decent guy. What he said is that in order to stay as an elected Republican in Congress, you have to lie about things that matter to Donald Trump. I don't want to do that. That, to me, just kind of lays bare one of the single most unattractive things about the modern Republican Party. I want my people, I don't care if I agree with you or disagree with you, it matters. We can argue about it. But if I can't rely on you just to speak the truth as you see it, that's just a level of grossness that I cannot respect.
Yeah, no question about that. We're going to go to a conversation that I had yesterday with Robbie George that was based on the Constitution and the institutions and the structural strengths that happen, the restraint that happens there, and then civic virtue. and those things. And you have to have both of those things in order to keep the democracy rolling and freedom moving along and our constitutional republic intact. And again, so many of those incentives have become so skewed that it makes it difficult for anyone. And one of the things that Robbie George said, and we're going to play some of this coming up at the top of the next hour, that he talked about was that none of this requires anyone to agree on what the solution should be or what the bill should be or the policy should be. But you do have to be able to speak the truth on it.
It's the point that Justin Amash makes, the former five-term congressman from Michigan, who was Republican and independent and libertarian, who's running for the Senate up there as a Republican again. But this is part of his critique about the way that Congress is now dysfunctional. How Congress should work is that it is, in his work, a discovery process, right? You're going to find people who are going to discover what a bill should be by introducing a bill, 14 spending bills, for example, as possible, and also you do that, and then you offer amendments, and you debate on the floor. Well, we haven't had that process in Congress for a decade straight. I mean, there's literally been no bills just normally offered with the ability to offer up amendments and a whole bunch of debates. We see what goes on, and we discover at the end what the compromise can be. That doesn't exist anymore. And when you rule that out, some of the civic habits of mind are ruled out as well. I mean, think of last night, right? And I don't know what you've said about the State of the Union address. I think, the general consensus is like, hey, Biden did better than expected. It was great for Democrats. They had a rip-roaring good time. And maybe you disagreed with, I don't know, everything he said or a lot of things that he said. But Democrats had a spring in their step afterwards. And I get that. And I guess I'm happy that they had a good day for once on some level. On another, you just look and the state of our discourse is not strong. Yeah. It is not good. We are acting like absolute juveniles out there. By we, I mean our representatives, including the president. It's much more like, professional wrestling or something. And I look forward to the day, and it ain't soon. It's not this election. It's not next election. I don't know when it's going to be, when that kind of sense of just civic normalcy and virtue come back. And, I've expressed, and I did today, some skepticism about no labels. The thing that I have in common for them, and I have some respect for, is that the type of people who are attracted to that, and this kind of includes Nikki Haley too, or the John McCain wing of the Republican Party, who I disagree with on policy, but those people do have that sense. Yeah. They lament what's happened to our politics. Now, they haven't at the same time admitted their own mistakes that cause people to turn towards the kind of clowns and the people throwing cream pies in everybody's faces. And that would have made that process easier. But I appreciate that about them, but I just don't think they're very realistic about politics right now.
Yeah, and you hit such an important thing. We talk about it every day on this show. That I love that whole idea that Congress has a process of discovery, but you have to have regular order so that you can put a bill on the floor and you can debate it and you can have open amendments, not this closed door, 11th hour, 1,000-page bill kind of stuff. Because as you said, Matt, when you stop doing that, those muscles, those civic muscles start to atrophy, and not just for the members of Congress, but for citizens everywhere. And I think that's a crucial part of that conversation as well. Matt Welch, editor-at-large at Reason, always great thinking and always helping us get to that discovery portion of the conversation. And, folks, that's where we have to stay. Remember, it's not State of the Union in terms of state of the government or state of the party politics or state of the presidential election. It's the State of the Union, the people, and that's up to all of us. Matt, thanks for helping us discover where we need to keep our attention as we try to move this forward.
Appreciate it, as always.
All right, that's Matt Welch, again, editor-at-large at Reason. Great thinker, great piece there. Check that out at Reason.com. We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Tomorrow, March 9th, is the day that Utah officially adopts its new state flag. The Utah Department of Community and Cultural Engagement plans a flag raising at 10 a.m. Saturday on the south steps of the state capitol, and a military color guard will be there along with members of the State Flag Task Force. One of the worst mine disasters in Utah's history happened 100 years ago today near Castle Gate, just outside of Helper. KSL News Radio's Becky Bruce looks back.
The date was March 8th, 1924. The location, the number 2 mine of the Utah Fuel Company. Miners spray water on coal dust to prevent blasts, but on that day, it's believed they didn't put down enough water, and the open flames of their headlamps set off the coal dust in 2 explosions.
172 men were killed that day, many of them buried in a cemetery east of Highway 6. A committee to help the surviving widows and children raised more than $132,000, an amount that would be more than $2 million today. Our top national story this hour. There's a new study that says drinking 2 liters of diet soda every week can increase your chance of an irregular heartbeat by about 20%. KSL News Radio's Michael Commit has more specifics.
A lot of factors were taken into account here, but researchers didn't discover any specific connection between the types of diet soda and the potential to develop AFib. But they did find out that drinking a liter or less of pure fruit juice every week actually lowered that chance instead.
People who drank regular soda, it increased their chance an additional 10%. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day 40 points, and the NASDAQ dropped 165. Our KSL weather, it's going to be fabulous weather for a flag raising. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
New home for the new year? Sounds nice, doesn't it? What about new lowered rates? Now's the time to step into a gorgeous new Nilsson home with less commute times, easy access, and with rates that have dropped more significantly than all year. Less really is more in this case. Less maintenance, less commute, and less money per month. Move north with Nilsson Homes. Choose from beautiful townhomes to Rambler communities for all stages of life. Most of all, Nilsson Homes are move-in ready and close to what you love and enjoy with easy commutes. Nilsson Homes has been building across the Wasatch Front for over 45 years, accommodating all the things you need, combined with the things you love. Make sure to ask about special savings. Experience your new home for the new year. Visit Nilsson Homes Communities at nilssonhomes.com. Nilson homes.com. That's nilssonhomes.com.
There are products that offer up to a 20% upfront bonus just for opening an account and up to 12% per year for retirement income. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and I've heard from other advisors saying this is too good to be true. No, it's not. We are one of the few who can offer products like these because we're independent. We're not registered with a broker-dealer who tells us what we have to sell, and we don't have to answer to a board of directors who prioritize shareholders over clients. So, is an upfront bonus up to 20% and 12% per year growth for income too good to be true? For most advisors, yes, but not Trajan Wealth. The fact that many of our clients come from other financial advisors is a testament to our value. Experience the Trajan Wealth difference for yourself. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have a rollover crash, possible injuries with crews on the scene. It's westbound at the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon. They are blocking a right lane of travel. And the cleanup continues of the multi-vehicle crash westbound I-80 at State Street. The exit ramp to State is still blocked off. Get Mr. Mac's Performance Missionary Package, including 1 performance suit, 4 end collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes, just $595. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, sunny and warm through the weekend, a high of 60 on Sunday. A few small storms will move in early next week. And right now, 37 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources, an inside look at 2024 presidential politics.
Well, it is that time of the week, our weekly segment here on Inside Sources, where you get an inside source, inside, in-depth look at presidential politics as we roll through 2024. And if you're like many of us, we're already counting down the days to the first Tuesday of November. But I will remind you that as painful as some of this is going to be, the first Wednesday of November will come. It will come, and we will all move on, and we'll be fine. Because just as we were pointing out earlier in the show, it really isn't about the politics. It's about community and culture leading, and the politicians will follow. We have to remember that. And so it's going to be just fine. And all you have to do, you could watch the State of the Union last night. You could watch all the analysis paralysis that's gone on ever since the president stopped speaking last night. And you could be pretty depressed, pretty discouraged, and think that the future is pretty bleak. But all you have to really do is just go walk around your neighborhood. Actually, just go check in on a neighbor that you might think could use a visit, or maybe just a little chit-chat. And you'll see. You can go on your way home tonight. Just stop by any field anywhere. You'll see Little League soccer and lacrosse and baseball happening. You'll see people being dropped off at schools for recitals and musicals and plays. And everything's going to be just fine as long as we keep the focus on community and culture. And we're going to dig into that in a big way coming up at the top of the hour. Robbie George from Princeton was here yesterday with the Wheatley Institute. Spoke there at the Wheatley Institute down at BYU last night. We're going to share some of his thoughts, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Robbie George and talk about some of those very things, our constitutional republic and the virtues that the people have to possess if we're going to maintain it. So we'll get into that coming up at the top of the hour, so stick around for that. Now, so with that hopeful component, let's dig into the inside of presidential politics this week. And I had to chuckle a couple of times this morning going through some of the analysis, and everyone was saying President Biden is kicking off political season today with stops in some of those key swing states like Pennsylvania. The reality was the president kicked it off last night politically inside of the State of the Union address, which I think was way over the top in terms of being politically charged. And, of course, Republicans met the political charged moment with their own antics. Here's a little exchange of where I think some of the challenges are. Here's President Biden from last night.
Tonight, let's all agree once again to stand up for seniors. Many of my friends on the other side of the aisle want to put Social Security on the chopping block. If anyone here tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise the retirement age, I will stop you. We have two ways to go. Republicans can cut Social Security and give more tax breaks to the wealthy. That's the proposal. Oh no, you guys don't want another $2 trillion tax cut? I kind of thought that's what your plan was.
All right. So this actually takes us back an entire year to the last State of the Union and the political moments around Social Security, where everyone agreed, by the way, that nobody was going to cut Social Security, Republicans and Democrats alike. And so the fact that the president went back to that talking point, and if you can find me a proposal or a bill in the House or the Senate that cuts Social Security, that would be a find because it doesn't exist. And so the president just went there last night, and should we all agree that we're not going to cut Social Security? Absolutely. But guess what? We've got to do some reforms around it, or there will be automatic cuts by 2034. So we need to have a serious conversation, not a political conversation, about all of this. On the Republican side, of course, it was Super Tuesday. This past week, Nikki Haley suspended her presidential campaign. She dedicated part of her speech bowing out of the race, suspending the campaign, to bringing the people of America together, rejecting the politics of partisanship and hate. Take a listen.
While we stand strong for the cause of freedom, we must bind together as Americans. We must turn away from the darkness of hatred and division. I will continue to promote all those values, as is the right of every American. I sought the honor of being your president. But in our great country, being a private citizen is privilege enough in itself.
Being a private citizen is privilege enough, and we are very privileged in this country, and we all should be grateful for that, and we all should lean in and do our part as we try to move everything forward. It was interesting, as she bowed out of the race, Nikki Haley did not endorse former President Trump as the nominee for the Republicans, and actually gave the former president some instructions if he wants to actually win not just a primary, but a general election. She said he has a long way to go to convince the rest of the Republicans and the rest of the nation to give him another chance.
It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that. At its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause, not turning them away. And our conservative cause badly needs more people. This is now his time for choosing.
Time for choosing. She invoked Ronald Reagan right there. Of course, that was his famous speech that really catapulted his efforts and ultimately his rise to the presidency, was that time for choosing. And that politics, the politics part of it, is a game of addition, not subtraction. You can't just burn the heretics. You got to win converts. That's how it works. And so she was saying that if the Republicans do want to be in charge of the White House or in charge of Congress, that's an addition problem, not a subtraction problem. And so that's a different kind of conversation. Now, earlier this week, I spoke with former campaign advisor to former President Barack Obama, Johanna Maska, our friend at News Nation. And we were looking at some of the things that stood out for her as an observer and as someone who's been in the middle of a presidential race, and what was standing out to her in the aftermath of Super Tuesday, and how that might play out for both the Democrats and the Republicans between now and the first Tuesday of November.
Big enthusiasm gap. I mean, that's what I was looking at the numbers, and I was just going, this is not good. I mean, people aren't showing up even when there are down ballot races for either candidate. I mean, Biden definitely does not have the base enthusiasm in the same way that Trump does. And so they are showing up for him, but not at exactly the same numbers as last time, because he's lost some of those more moderate Republicans who don't believe that the election was stolen.
That's Johanna Maska from News Nation, and we went on in that conversation to talk about the enthusiasm gap for both the current and the former president. And there are some things that are pretty interesting to look at. And then, of course, you've got some folks like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the race that could pull some from who he pulls votes from. I don't like to say that they're stealing votes, because that's a wrong way to look at voting. We should vote for who we think we should vote for. And it doesn't matter what party they're in or if they're likely to win or not. We have to remember, especially in presidential politics, if we boil it all down to a lesser of two evils choice, the people in power maintain power. It's when we, the people, decide, I'm going to cast my vote for the person I think is best, whether I think they have a chance of winning or not. Because if we don't, then there's never a chance, and the status quo will prevail. And that's the biggest threat to the future of our constitutional republic, is for us all to just abdicate or to just disengage from the process. We need more people leaning in. We need more conversations about what actually matters and how we put all of that and stitch all of that together to form that more perfect union. All right, we're going to step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next right here on KSL News Radio. Stick around. You know, one of the things that I love about Hercules First Federal Credit Union is it is all about in the community. I was in their office just a couple of weeks ago, and just the feel, it feels community. You always hear me talk about it. Community leads, and Hercules Credit Union leads because they're connected to you. They know your name, they know what you're doing, they know what you need, and can help you build stronger financially. Right now, Hercules Credit Union has a home court advantage loan. If you're buying a first home, that's a big decision. That's a big deal. Lots of challenges, lots of changes that you have to navigate your way through. So let Hercules Credit Union, let their mortgage experts find the right loan for you. They're going to make it easy and simple. They'll take the stress and the uncertainty out of the process because that's what they do best right in the community. You can find their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, or Salt Lake City, or as always with our friends at Hercules, you can find them online, HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
Guys, did you know your testosterone affects everything in your system, including how you feel and perform every day? Right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. Knowing your T levels is the first step in understanding if you have low T. Your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED. Maintaining an appropriate T level can change your whole life. Most men start to see changes in their hormone levels in their 30s. Experience and results matter. So what are you waiting for? Get your T levels checked today by local, experienced, and trusted men's health experts. They've helped thousands of men since 2011. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Call Revive today and schedule your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit revivemenshealth.com.
Healthcare with human kindness is here. It's at Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Together, we have a common purpose, partnering with you in health and healing using powerful medicine, powerful technology, and the greatest power of all, human kindness. You'll know it when you see it, because human kindness is in every care site and in every caregiver. Common Spirit Health. Hello, human kindness.
The life of a small business owner. Keeping the lights on, calling all the shots. And then there's workplace accidents. 500-degree ovens, rusty nails. Danger lurks around every corner. Workplace accidents can happen, but there is an easy way to keep your employees covered. Talk to your agent about workers' comp coverage from Pi, or go to piinsurance.com and get a quote. Safety first, then Pi Insurance. Individual rates, offerings, and savings may vary, subject to policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states and situations.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, do it now. Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Boyd Matheson. Listening to Inside Sources is a little different from just reading the headlines because we're always going to get you into that think again moment. We have experts from around the country, across the world, and right here local to home that'll help us dive in and get past just the hype, the fluff, the fake fights, and the false choice so we can get into the news to help you connect the dots and make the news make sense.
Join Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, 3 police agencies were involved in an incident this morning that left a car burglary suspect dead in Riverton. Second, a new study says even moderate consumption of diet soda can increase your risk of atrial fibrillation. Third, climate change, making it harder to produce maple syrup in the early spring, even changing its flavor. Right now, 36 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
We are super thrilled to have joining us in studio today. We don't get to do that very often. Cheryl Fox is the CEO of the Summit Land Conservatory. And Cheryl, thanks for joining us today. And to me, this is one of those crucial conversations, and it's one where we often see a great deal of division. And one of the things that I love about what you and your organization are doing is bringing a different conversation when it comes to what I think is stewardship, conservation. How do we get to those conversations?
Well, thank you. It's lovely to be here and talking with you today. As the Summit Land Conservancy started to look in our region and see what we could do in terms of voluntary land conservation to help with the larger question in the region of how do we stabilize the Great Salt Lake, we realized that saving farms and ranches in the Wasatch Back, which is what we do, is an important part of the overall solution to saving the Great Salt Lake. And we thought, well, what are we going to bring to this table that is a little bit unique and a little bit different? And we had just had our 20th anniversary as an organization. And as we went through that, we realized that the reason we've been able to be successful and save so much land is the collaborative partnerships that we have built over 20 years. Yeah. And those partnerships then took a step further and became friendships. And so we thought, all right, if this is a big problem, there are a lot of tentacles to it, but it just seemed that we have a choice in this moment, and we can get angry at each other. We can think that, the way I'm trying to solve the problem is the only way to solve the problem. Or we can say, how about we work together? How about we say, here's our part of helping to solve this problem, and you go do your part to help solving this problem. So working collaboratively, working in partnership. And the thing that we found about this is what I love is that then it leads to actually friendships. Yeah. And I think that in the larger, again, conversations that we're starting to have or not having, maybe, as the case is really important.
Yeah, and I love that. I love this whole approach. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not a fake fight. It's not a false choice. It's not a handout on one thing. It's not a big government program on the other. But I want to get to the essence of this, because we've been talking a lot this week about how critical it is to have relationships, not just transactions. And you've taken that one step further, that it's not just a relationship, it's a friendship.
That's
and
right.
when you do that, you can have a very different conversation, even in areas where your approach might be a little different. But if we each take a little piece of it, we might get something really good.
Exactly. And it's really natural for us because, again, when we're doing conservation transactions, we're working with families. And it takes a long time to get all of these things, all the parts of it together, to get family members to agree. And then, as we bring the funding sources to the table, they don't move very quickly. So we do have to spend a lot of time really together. And really, I use the analogy, keeping people in the boat.
Yeah.
And I did have one landowner say to me, because the transaction was dragging on and on and on, I said, well, you got to stay in the boat. We're all in the boat together. And he says, I'm getting kind of seasick. Thought, okay. But that really does it. It builds trust.
Yeah.
And it does build friendship. And, as you're having these conversations, you start talking about your kids, and you talk about a vacation that you're hoping to have, or you talk about, what your teenagers are up to.
Yeah.
And I just think that it does really build those relationships that you're talking about. And the thing that I really think that's important about this is we get people around the table in these conservation transactions who aren't always talking to each other in any other way, shape, or form. And I just think that it's really important. It puts a face on something, and I think it helps us to understand that actually, people are lovely. People want to be lovely. When we're saving the farms and ranches and, the basic underlying fundamental things of these small communities along the Wasatch Back, it warms my heart to see how generous and sensitive and just lovely people are.
Yeah. I want to unpack that a little bit just so our listeners can get a sense of how this process kind of plays out. Of course, we're looking at open space. One of the things that I loved on your website is you start looking at all of the impact points there of this open space, and whether it's recreation, whether it's farm, whether it's tourism, all of those things, they all kind of come together in that. And so just kind of walk us through a scenario and what that conversation would look like.
So the Summit Land Conservancy works all across the Wasatch Back in a variety of communities. And sometimes we're helping a community preserve land that's important to the resort economy in, say, Midway, for example. They need to have open space, they need to have trails, that type of thing. In other situations, maybe we're preserving a farm or a ranch in in northern Summit County where, that's not about recreational access. That's about, the family and the heritage and preserving the rural economy. So we really spend a lot of time listening to what the community needs and then and primarily what the landowner needs. Right. And then we go to our networks and our other friends and say, okay, who shares these values, who shares these interests, and how are we going to work together to save this property?
I love that. I can think of about 27 different applications for that very strategy. If we can start by listening to the people and what the needs are in the community, as opposed to something that's either some organization that's far, far away or some government that's in the marbled halls of Congress. This is a very different approach to that.
It is really. And again, we're a charity. We're a nonprofit organization. And so I think we have to listen. We have to be responsive to what our communities are asking us to do.
Yeah, so important. So as you watch this play out, as you've seen this play out over the years, the relationships that you've developed and this crucial thing along the Wasatch Back, there's so many just beautiful spaces there that are rich in history, rich in heritage in terms of the people who live there, but also they're a rich resource in terms of the future. Talk to me about how you keep all of those things balanced in terms of a strategy as you try to do that preservation and again, move towards the future.
Well, as you say, we do listen to what the community is asking for. And I really feel it's an incredible honor to be able to serve these longtime landowning families who really have so much history and heritage in their property, and they want to save that for the greater good, for the future. So when we're preserving a farm or a ranch, it's not just about that particular piece of property, but I like to say there's a cascade of other benefits. Yeah. So if a farmer chooses to preserve the farm, it's not just that person's joy in being out on their ground, it's also local agriculture. And these farms and ranches, obviously there's water and water resources that can be used on the farm, and if the farmer chooses, they can also be used to help mitigate the issues with the Salt Lake. But there's also wildlife habitat. Most Western wildlife spends at least 80% of its time on private ground, so that's an important benefit. Yeah. And then, and also one of the things that I really like about land conservation, it solves a lot of problems without having to build new stuff. You don't have to have new, as you say, governmental programs. You don't have to build, some kind of a factory or some, something else. It's all happening already on the ground, and it's also beautiful.
Yeah. I love that. This is powerful stuff. This is important work. And Cheryl, we appreciate you coming in today. Cheryl, again, is the CEO of the Summit Land Conservancy, doing great work, open space, and doing it in the right way. This is a Utah model extraordinaire. This is one more thing we need to export around the country as well.
I hope so. And actually, the Summit Land Conservancy is called a land trust, and there are about 1,000 land trusts all across the nation. And most of them are like us. They're very grassroots. It's very bottom up. And so, there are land trusts in other parts of the country that are doing things a little differently, but we get to do it the way it works for us in Utah. And I think that it's soothing for one. You're not fighting the system all the time. And I just think it's really lovely. I get an opportunity to see people at their best day after day because they are working together and they are working for something that, it helps them and it maybe helps their family, but it also helps the greater good.
Yeah. Love that. That's the name of the game. Fantastic. Cheryl Fox, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Love it when we have those conversations of let's do this differently. Let's have a different kind of conversation, and we can apply that to so many different places and spaces, and we just need to do that and do it better. Big thanks to Cheryl Fox for joining us today. And that's going to wrap it up for us in hour number 1 of Inside Sources. But don't go anywhere, because starting hour number 2, we're going to go to a speech delivered last night at the Wheatley Institute by Robbie George from Princeton University, talking about the Constitution and civic virtues. I actually had the chance to sit down with Robbie George for an in-depth interview. That'll air on Sunday on KSL TV. So stick around. We're going to give you a little sneak peek into some of those crucial conversations, those important principles and values that really do undergird the Constitution and give strength to the Republic. We'll be back with hour number 2 of Inside Sources next.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. The U.S. Senate has passed an extension to the government program that compensates people exposed to radiation from nuclear weapons tests. The new version of the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act also improves benefits for workers who were exposed in uranium mines. Both of Utah's senators, Mike Lee and Mitt Romney, voted against it. The Georgia State Senate is recognizing the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square. It was last fall the choir invited glee clubs from Morehouse and Spelman colleges in Atlanta to perform on the weekly music and spoken word broadcast. This fall, the Tabernacle Choir is going to visit Atlanta to perform at State Farm Arena. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden takes his State of the Union message on the road today as he campaigns in Pennsylvania. Mr. Biden and the First Lady will stop in suburban Philadelphia, hoping to reach voters like Renee Gensel.
He showed up last night and he looked raring to go. He commented on all of the heckling that was happening last night during the State of the Union, so I felt like he was with it. He knew what was going on.
Gensel says she didn't think the president's age is an issue. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day 68 points. The NASDAQ was down 188. And it looks like we're going to have a fine day tomorrow and Sunday as well. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
Are you really that different than the rest of us?
We are. As a fiduciary, we always focus on what's best for our clients.
What services do you offer besides investing?
We have a team of specialists in financial planning, estate planning, and more.
Your clients rely on you for all that?
Yes, we ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Okay, but you still sell commission-based products, right?
No, because we believe that's a conflict of interest. We prioritize service over sales goals.
So, then how do your fees work?
We have a simple and transparent fee that's a percentage of our clients' portfolios. So we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, we're more different than I thought.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at fisherinvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
When the weather warms up, it's like a stampede, except instead of dust stirred up by hundreds of hooves, it's a cascade of phone calls to Advanced Window Products. This is Jeff Kaplan. Soon as the sun shines and the snow's gone, people want new windows and frames from Utah's #1 custom window maker, and the wait for installation grows longer. But right now, you can get near the front of the line by calling for a quote and get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. That's on top of the incredible savings for the highest quality double-pane windows and frames, any style, any color. See, at Advanced Window Products, they actually build the windows here in Utah, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. There's no middleman, and they can pass the savings on to you. They even offer buy now, pay later. So get in before the wait grows longer and get the $2,500 off. Get your new windows this spring. Make the call. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Going to a Jazz game is more fun together. Host an unforgettable night at Delta Center with colleagues, friends, families, whoever. Group tickets are the best way to get everyone together to cheer on the Jazz. Pick from a variety of options for seating, dining, and game day experiences. Start planning your big night at the game by calling 801-355-DUMP, emailing group sales at utahjazz.com, or simply visiting utahjazz.com/tickets.
Would you like to be part of an important research study and receive up to $550? The Beehive study at the University of Utah is comparing how well 2 different FDA-authorized booster vaccines protect people against COVID-19. You can decide to get a booster or not and still participate. By joining the Beehive study, you'll have the chance to receive up to $550 for completing activities such as weekly COVID tests and brief surveys about your health. Call 801-203-0320 or email beehivestudy@utah.edu to learn more. You can also visit the study website at www.beehivestudy.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
It's the final cleanup of a rollover crash. That westbound right lane is still blocked in Little Cottonwood Canyon as you're approaching the mouth of the canyon, and a stalled vehicle northbound Bangerter just after 90th South. The UACPA supports certified public accountants in Utah through ongoing professional education and leadership development. Find a CPA that works for you at uacpa.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, sunny and warm through the weekend, high of 60 on Sunday, and a few small storms will move in early next week. Right now, 37 degrees, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We often talk about our constitutional republic and the importance of the Constitution. And then we have the flip side of that, which is our responsibility. And that falls under the heading of civic virtue, civil society. It's the you and me portion of the program. It's important to recognize that the Constitution just creates space and a framework under which we, the people, can form a more perfect union. But in order to form that more perfect union, it requires citizens to live up to many of those principles we profess to believe. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Yesterday down at the Wheatley Institute on the campus of Brigham Young University, Robert George was in town. Robbie George, as he's often referred to, he's an American legal scholar, political thinker, observer, and leads the McCormick. He's the McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence and the director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University, and truly one of the extraordinary thinkers and moral voices of our time. And 2 things as we dive into this. His speech last night, I'm going to share a little bit of that with you to get kind of underneath the hood in terms of our responsibility. And then I had the opportunity to sit down and go one-on-one for an in-depth conversation with Professor George that will air on Sunday edition on KSL 5 TV, 9 a.m. You want to make sure you hit that on Sunday. And so let's begin with some of his comments from last night down at the Wheatley Institute. He spoke on the vital importance of non-governmental institutions and that connection. Again, it's those muscles of civil society and civic charity and virtue that we actually have to get to.
And there's a profound lesson in this for those of us who are interested in ensuring that the rulers remain servants, ruling in the interests of citizens, and do not reduce the citizenry to a condition of dependency or servitude. For it is critical to the effective limitation of governmental power that there be substantial non-governmental centers of power in a society. There have to be alternative authority structures, those over which the state has no plenary jurisdiction. Now, the state can require that the church, for example, obey the fire code, but it shouldn't be interfering with the doctrine of the church or the teaching of the church. Private property and the market economy not only provide the conditions of social mobility, which is important to the common good in any modern or dynamic society, but also ensure that there are significant resources and thus opportunities for people in the private associations they form that are not in the control of governmental officials and the apparatus of the state. This diffusion of power, so it's not all concentrated up here, but is diffused, this diffusion of power benefits society as a whole, and not only those who immediately benefit economically from the possession of property or the ability to profit in the market. And I'm not simply here talking about general prosperity, though that's yet another benefit of private property in the market system. I'm talking about the benefit to all of us in terms of liberty, opportunity, and security of the diffusion of power. And this goes well beyond economics. If we understand the common good, if we have a grasp of what constitutes or is conducive to the flourishing of human beings and what is not, we'll recognize that limited government is also important because it permits the functioning and flourishing of non-governmental institutions of civil society, those little platoons again, families and churches and civic associations that perform better than government could ever conceivably do the most essential health, education, and welfare functions, and which play the primary role in transmitting to each new generation the virtues without which these free societies cannot survive: basic honesty, integrity, self-restraint, concern for others, respect for their dignity and rights, civic-mindedness, all of these virtues. Every institution of society, from the highest level of government on down, for their functioning, depend on there being a large number, there will always be aberrant cases, but a large number of not perfect, but pretty darn good citizens. The court system relies on there being people who won't be corrupted to be jurors. Right? Employers, Google, Apple, the local store, all rely on employees who will show up to work on time, not drunk or on drugs, do an honest day's work for an honest wage, not embezzle. Every institution of society depends, for its functioning and flourishing, on there being honorable people. But none of those institutions can produce honorable people. People who have the virtues that I just listed. Who produces them, if they are produced at all? Mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and auntie and uncle and pastor and coach and teacher. It's the family, assisted by the church and the other associations of civil society, the Little League team and so forth, the 4-H, the Scouts or the Campfire Girls or what have you. They are what transmit to each new generation the virtues that enable members of that generation to be honorable people and effective citizens. As I say again, every institution relies on them, but they can't produce them. Only the family can produce them, which means that when government or private corporations or any other actors damage the family, do things that undermine the integrity of the family, that promote family disintegration or failure of family formation, promote immoral practices, they are undermining the very institution on which they rely to produce their workers, their jurors, their voters, their citizens.
Robbie George talking about the power of civil society, that it's coaches and teachers and pastors and friends and neighbors and aunts and uncles and family that help us learn those virtues that enable us to contribute to businesses, to community, to government, and to all of those things. Robbie George went on to talk about how government will be compelled to step in when civil society and civil structures and institutions fail, and often the results of that kind of government intervention actually makes things worse.
These institutions of civil society can play their role, their proper role, producing those people, those citizens, only when government stays in its lane, is limited by constitutional structures. For unlimited government, we know this from 20th century history all too well, whether it's a government of the right or a government of the left, unlimited government always usurps the authority and destroys the autonomy of families and churches and other institutions of civil society, usually recruiting or commandeering them into being state functionary organs. And where they are playing their proper role, these institutions, the institutions themselves create conditions in which the ideal of limited government is much more likely to be realized and preserved, and its benefits enjoyed by the people. And what I mean by that is simply this. Where civil society breaks down, where the family disintegrates or fails to form, where the church is for all intents and purposes AWOL, you got social anarchy, crime, delinquency, drugs, violence. And somebody's got to step in. Somebody's got to restore order. Who will that somebody be? Big Brother, the government. It has no choice. It has to step in because the alternative is chaos. And they will play the role that should be played by the family and the church and the civil association. The government will do a bad job, but there is no alternative to doing it. So limited government relies on the integrity and the autonomy and the flourishing of families. Where families flourish, you don't have all that much need for an overbearing government, whether it's a police force or a welfare agency or what have you. Government can play its limited role where the family is taking its responsibility for providing health, education, and welfare at the most fundamental level, for transmitting the virtues necessary for decent lives and good citizenship. So a critical element of any discussion of the quality of democratic deliberation and decision-making that amounts to anything more than hot air will be the indispensable role of the family and other non-governmental institutions of civil society in sustaining a culture in which political institutions do what they're established to do it well, and don't do what they are not constitutionally authorized to do.
Everybody stay in your lane. Civil society has a role. Government has a role. Everybody stay in their lane. That makes it so that we're not dependent upon or oppressed by government, and humans actually flourish. That's Robbie George down at the Wheatley Institute at Brigham Young University last night. A lot to think about, a lot to unpack. We'll come back to that coming up at 2:50. We'll step aside. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Rick at loansbyrick.com has some important information for anyone in Utah and Idaho who's thinking of buying a house. Do it now. Don't wait until summer, because home prices in those two states will likely increase by 10 to 20% due to in-migration from California and other states. That means a house that costs $400,000 right now will go up by $40 to $80,000 with multiple offers. Interest rates may drop later in the year, possibly to the 6% range, but the increased cost of the home will mean that your monthly payments will go up by a lot. So start looking and buy now. Refinance when the interest rates go down. Waiting to buy your home will only hurt you in the long run. For more details and buying strategies, call Rick at loansbyrick.com right now. 801-809-SAVE. Rick can evaluate your situation and get you on the path to buying a home today. 801-809-SAVE or click loansbyrick.com. Rick Kirschenbaum, NMLS 241179 and Vintage Lending, NMLS 287106 are equal housing lenders. Some restrictions apply.
The winners. Best documentary. Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon, starring on Utah's Morning News from 5 to 9. Best duo performance. Dave Noriega and Debbie DeGenovic from 9 to noon. Best original monologue. Boyd Matheson, host of Inside Sources from 1 to 3. And best 1-minute screenplay. Jeff Kaplan's Minute of News, weekdays from 3 to 7. Now starring on a smart speaker near you. Just ask Alexa. Play KSL News Radio.
It's first and goal at the 10-yard line with seconds left on the clock. Your running back is poised for a game-winning touchdown, but before you can make the snap, the opposing team just takes the ball and locks it inside a safe? Then they won't give you the combination unless you pay them $10,000? That's how ransomware works. And in 2021, 2 out of every 3 organizations fell victim to ransomware attacks. Protect your business with the Les Olson Security Suite from Les Olson IT. Learn more at lesolson.com.
For over 100 years and 4 generations, my family has provided quality installations from the most well-known brands in the heating and air conditioning industry. Hello, I'm Brian Jackson with Manuel Plumbing and Heating. Now, until March 1st, purchase a high-efficient home comfort system and receive a free bypass humidifier or a 5-inch media filter to complete your new system. Give us a call and let one of our knowledgeable sales staff provide a free in-home consultation on what Manuel can do for you and your home. Be sure to ask about rebates and our financing options. Call Manuel today, 801-262-4671.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
It is always a good Friday when we're able to have Representative John Curtis join us on the program, and it's always coming or going to our nation's capital. A big week, a busy week, both on the front of good policy and bad policy, and good politics and bad politics as we look at it all. And so, give us first just kind of an overall view of the week from Washington D.C. What was the feel and flavor this week back there?
It was busy. It was busy top to bottom. Of course, we were dealing with the budget. We were dealing with State of the Union. And a big deal in my committee yesterday was the very controversial topic of TikTok and how to deal with it.
Yeah, and let's start right there, because I think it's one that we often just kind of glance over and everyone kind of turns the other way, and what could possibly go wrong category of putting your head in the sand. But give us some of the things that have come out in terms of a bill that you have advanced out of that committee as it relates to TikTok and why that matters.
So we all got an object lesson in why it mattered yesterday, because TikTok, in anticipation of us voting on a bill that would mandate that it could not be owned by the Chinese government, pulled a stunt that was not in their favor and ended up with a 50-0 vote, which never happens. Boy, for a committee to come out 50-0, that we have to have some strong feelings. Every Republican and every Democrat voted for this bill. And to give a little background, we were going to vote on a bill that would not allow Chinese ownership of TikTok if they were going to operate here in the United States, and we can go into why in just a moment. But TikTok's reaction to that was to put up on a screen of anybody that accessed the app, first of all, a requirement that they enter their zip code, and then a requirement that they actually call their member of Congress before they could use the app. And that so angered the committee, because think about this. You have to understand TikTok is owned by the Chinese government, and that the Chinese government, as one of those prerequisites, demands of Chinese companies access to data. So in effect, the Chinese government was collecting data on everybody's zip code and then demanding an action out of that before they use the app. Think about, you talk about where things could go wrong. Imagine if that were for an election, and TikTok wanted everybody that used their app to call on a specific politician and weigh in on a certain way. The ability to influence an election, particularly now, pair that with their algorithms of changing behavior, and it is really scary. And it's so bothered the committee. That's why they got that 50-0 vote.
Wow, that is stunning. I don't know if we've had that kind of unity on anything in Congress for a very long time. But rightly so,
Yeah.
and I want you to unpack this a little bit for us, because I think from your unique perch there on that committee, because really there's two elements to all of this. You mentioned the algorithm component in terms of what happens, and then you've also got that kind of that election interference or misinformation, disinformation component. Break those down for us.
Thank you. So think about this. The use of algorithms combined with artificial intelligence has given social media companies the ability to attract people's attention, to sell them product. And some of that is quite harmless. As a matter of fact, my kids will tell you they really like that they can have product that they may be interested offered up to them. But it can cross a line really hard and really fast. And that is and we see that with TikTok, particularly with influencing youth. And that's why the state of Utah has been so aggressive with social media companies, is these algorithms can be used. And think about this. They know everything about you, what you buy, everything about where you go, when you were there, how long you were there. They know who you communicate with. They know what you like. And they take all that data and they use artificial intelligence and have the ability to influence behavior. We all know that's very well documented. So that's one thing, to influence behavior on consumer purchases. It's quite another to influence behavior, let's say, on things that impact depression and even suicide and body image. And what about elections? Now, combine all of that with the ownership being the Chinese government, and you can see that you have a tool in the hands of somebody who you don't trust with that data to manipulate U.S. Citizens and U.S. voters.
Yeah, that requiring a specific action, that's one that should send down shivers down everybody's spine. as you look at how that could start to be manipulated and played out.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? It won't surprise you. We had thousands of young people call our office because the app was requiring them to do so. High percentages of those hung up as soon as we answered, and the others who would actually take the time for my staff to explain to them what the bill actually did had no problem with the bill, right? We were not trying to ban TikTok. We weren't We weren't trying to take away their usage. We were simply saying the ownership is a problem. And these were very uninformed people who were simply responding to the information that they got on the app. And, thank goodness we were able to explain it to a lot of them. But you can see how that on a large scale, repeatedly, when we talk about, we talked before about Russia interfering in our elections or China interfering in our elections. Now we can all see exactly how this works. And we can agree that, we just have to be far more careful with this and make good decisions.
Yeah, and I think that's so vital for all of us to think that all the way through. So again, starting back where you began, Congressman, in terms of how that's going to impact our young people, depression, body image, all of those bullying, all of those things that take place. Then you get to elections. Then you have data going to a foreign government. The fact that they can then manipulate or demand certain action as a result of it. And I'm glad you've got good interns, good staff trained up there to have those conversations because I think that's another one that we just miss. Everyone says, well, everyone has my data, this and that. But the fact that a Chinese company that has a connection to the Chinese government is forced to share their data. That's part of being able to operate for them. So describe for us kind of the next steps of this. Now that it came out with a 50-0 out of committee, where does it go from here? What's the next step in this process?
Steve Scalise, who controls the floor, has said he'll bring it to a vote as early as next week. So hopefully that will happen. I suspect it probably won't get a complete unanimous vote, but I suspect it will get a very strong bipartisan vote in the House, which would then move it over to the Senate, and we would hope our Senate colleagues would agree with us, as to the urgency. I think it's fair to say Congress in general, like the Utah legislature, has been looking and trying to figure out what the appropriate guardrails are for social media. We don't want to go too far. We don't want to take away, the free speech. But this seems to be an area that we have picked that there might be some consensus of, okay, this is not too far. We're not banning the app, right? We're being, I think, pretty careful in our approach here. And I'm hopeful that it's one area of bipartisan and bicameral agreement that we can say, look, okay, we just took one notch. We have a lot of notches to go here, but we just took one where there was broad agreement.
Yeah, I think that's such a great model of being very specific, very laser focused, using a scalpel, not a blunt force instrument, to get at good policy, as opposed to trying to do everything with a big whack that rarely ends up good in the end. Before I let you go, Congressman, give us two things. Give us one thing from the State of the Union address. Give us one thing that came out of that speech that you agreed with the president on. And then give us one thing that was left out that you think is missing in the dialogue in what is supposed to be a State of the Union, not a State of the government or a State of the politics.
I thought where he started with Ukraine, and I had been waiting for the president to be more articulate, and I was so glad that he was more articulate than he's been, and we need to continue to be more articulate with American people about what we're trying to accomplish there in Ukraine and why we support them. And of course, Israel, both of those. I think we just cannot do enough to explain to the American people what the situation is and what Americans' interest is. On the other side, I wish somehow there would have been a calculator to add up the cost of everything he talked about last night. Like, first of all, we're $34 trillion in debt. And as fast as he could talk, he was throwing out things he wanted to spend money on, as if this was a candy store. He was giving out candy, and it's very, very expensive candy. Let's put it that way, and the debt. And there were just great concerns about, first of all, where we are with the debt, and then even conceivably going down this road where we were just going to take this long list of give-me's and give them to the American people because people figured out they like free things was very disturbing to me.
Yeah.
we got to be a little bit more thoughtful about $34 trillion.
Well, great insight as always. I think what your work there on the committee is so crucial, and I think this particular conversation, as it relates to TikTok, is one that we all need to lean in and pay attention to. We don't need to be forced by TikTok to call our member of Congress. We can just do that on our own. That's my conversation with John Curtis. We'll step aside for a quick bottom of the hour news. When we come back, Niall Stanage is going to join us from News Nation and The Hill to talk about some of the takeaways from President Biden's speech to the nation. We'll break that down coming up next. Stick around.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. About a week and 25 trips to the landfill later, South Jordan has finished its tumbleweed cleanup.
We collaborated with our residents, once we cleared the city's right-of-ways and provided dumpsters for our residents, for them to clear in front of their houses. Kind of everything that was left was in the HOA's area, and they stepped up to help the residents.
That's Rachel Van Cleve with the city of South Jordan, who says they believe Tumblegeddon 2024 is over for now, but there's always the possibility it could happen again because of the city's proximity to undeveloped land. Our top national story this hour from ABC News, the health ministry in Gaza, which is run by Hamas, says as many as 5 children have been killed by American aid packages falling from airplanes. Pentagon spokesperson General Pat Ryder says it's not true.
Press reports that U.S. airdrops resulted in civilian casualties on the ground are false, as we've confirmed that all of our aid bundles landed safely on the ground.
The United States has been dropping food and supplies on beaches in Gaza. Now it's helping to build a temporary port for unloading ships. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day 68 points, and the NASDAQ closing trading today down 188 points. And our KSL weather, you're looking at a very nice weekend. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio. I just elevated my checking account with Utah Community Credit Union. Tim, I'm so blown away at what I get with my elevated checking account at UCCU. I get so many benefits. I get cell phone protection and roadside assistance. The one that blows me away the most is telehealth. I actually get zero copay telehealth with my checking account from UCCU.
Did you know you also get a 0.25% loan discount? It's one of the many things. And if you like to travel or you're on the road quite a bit, a free ATM nationwide, 30,000 ATM locations that you can use while you're out.
Utah basketball star Walker Kessler and Utah Community Credit Union have come together to announce this brand new elevated checking account with more benefits, more savings, more online protections than ever before.
Yeah, there's even something for dark web monitoring, which I have never heard of before, but you can find out more by just going to uccu.com.
And open an elevated checking account online or stop by any branch.
UCCU, you're going to love where you bank.
Do you have a vision of what your kitchen would look like with new cabinets, drawers, or pull-outs? Do you wish your closets were more organized and functional? Are you building or remodeling? I want you to take a good look at Euromax Authentic European Furniture. This is Hans Olsen, and I've spent a good amount of time getting to know Mike and Max, the creators of Euromax. Max comes to us from Ukraine with European flair, and Mike has been building cabinets in America for nearly 30 years. They had a vision that cabinets could be done better, and they brought that to life. Euromax offers you a first-class customer experience. They'll come to your house, they'll sit down with you and their designer, they'll show you every beautiful option they have to offer and guarantee their work 100%. I want to invite you to their showroom in Pleasant Grove, but start by taking a look at what they have to offer at EuromaxFurniture.com. I know I'm just a sports loudmouth, but I know custom and quality when I see it. Visit EuromaxFurniture.com and take a look at what I'm talking about. That's EuromaxFurniture.com. Euromax, built for you.
Held over due to popular demand. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, today through Sunday. Utah State Fair Park. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, today through Sunday. Utah State Fair Park. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Utah State Fair Park. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Utah State Fair Park. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Utah State Fair Park. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Utah State Fair Park. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Utah State Fair Park. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have an auto pedestrian crash in Taylorsville near 5600 South, about 4400 West, and a couple of vehicles that were on the side of the road southbound I-15 just before 33rd South. Join Weber State University March 15th for a celebration of Indigenous culture and heritage, featuring Native American and classical musicians, dancers, and more poets weaving harmony on stage. Tickets at weber.edu/Browning presents. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, sunny and warm through the weekend, a high of 60 on Sunday. A few small storms, though, will move in early next week. And right now, 37 degrees, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always, as we kind of round out the processing of the day after the State of the Union. We want to get to some takeaways. And just a reminder that these addresses have really unraveled and derailed over the last decade. It's gone from a State of the Union to a State of the Government to a State of the Politics, and that's not what it was intended to be. But there were some things and there were some moments within it that I think are important, not just for presidential politics, not just for what the government is or isn't doing, but some things that in there that I think we all should be thinking about as we move through the months ahead. And someone who's always a very careful observer of these things, Niall Stanage, of course, senior staff writer, White House columnist for The Hill, and joins us on the line. And Niall, welcome to the day after the State of the Union. And give us your high-level view. Many said this was far too political in nature, that maybe the president gave the speech he was supposed to give today in Pennsylvania politically in the well of the House chamber last night.
Yeah, I mean, it was clearly a political speech. It was a campaign speech in many ways. I'm not sure that I necessarily see that as some terrible breach of decorum. I see it more as symptomatic of the political moment that we're in. But look, I mean, we saw the president begin with attacking former President Trump for the comment he made about NATO, saying that he was bowing down to a Russian leader. Biden then talking about January the 6th, and going on to criticize not just former President Trump, but the Republican Party for positions that he felt were either antithetical to women's rights or overly punitive toward working people in order to help the super wealthy, things of that nature. So clearly setting out his stall for the beginnings of a campaign.
Yeah, no question about that. One of the things you pointed out in your piece that I really appreciated was how the president had to navigate the issues and dealing with Israel and the Netanyahu government and dealing with Gaza, both the Hamas portion of that and, of course, the innocent civilians there as well. How did he do from your perspective in terms of threading that needle?
So he had at least some news to announce in that respect. This is obviously the quest by the U.S. military to build this temporary emergency pier on Gaza's Mediterranean coast, and the hope that in doing that it will expedite the humanitarian aid that's obviously desperately needed there. The broader issue of Israel and Gaza and the Palestinians divides the Democratic Party almost down the middle. In fact, there are a number of polls now suggesting that the plurality of Democrats sympathize more with the Palestinians than the Israelis. That obviously causes a political problem for President Biden, no matter where one personally comes down on that topic. And so it's, to some level, an insoluble conundrum that he faces in that topic.
Yeah, no question about that. One of the other areas that has been a struggle for the administration, again, kind of threading the needle. They've had some successes policy-wise in terms of getting their agenda through, especially as it relates to the economy. And yet so many Americans just aren't feeling that. So there's sort of that disconnect or lack of alignment. So the president had to try to tout successes and at the same time say, hey, I feel your pain around the kitchen table. How'd you do on that front?
I think that's a really very difficult thing for him to do. Biden and the White House talk a lot about the good elements of their economic record, be that job creation or measures that they believe have really helped Americans' lives, like giving Medicare the capacity to negotiate drug prices, for example. The difficulty is on the economy. The population at large just isn't feeling it, as you point out. I personally think that could be the legacy of the very high inflation we saw roughly 20 months ago now. But the president's standing on the economy never seems to have recovered from that. He was talking last night about the greatest comeback story never told, a sort of tacit acknowledgement that the message that he wants to be heard on the economy has not really landed with the electorate.
Yeah, definitely been a continued struggle there. They're trying to figure out the right framing and wording to get that message across. And then, of course, in the least desirable job or the, hey, we have a great opportunity for you category, that no one should ever take that. You had the Republican rising star stumbling in the kitchen a bit when it came to the response for the Republicans from Senator Katie Britt, young Republican from Alabama.
Yeah, that really wasn't a good moment. Now, I do take the point that the response to a State of the Union is an almost impossible task. Yeah. You go from a president with all that grandeur to you in your kitchen, in Senator Britt's case. And that's just not great. It's like, following a Super Bowl show by playing your acoustic guitar in your bedroom or something. It just doesn't really work terribly well. But I do think that she compounded those difficulties with that peculiar delivery, which, I think regardless of one's political views, seemed over-theatrical to a lot of people and therefore counterproductive.
Yeah, no question about that. And then let's round out with some of the things relating to immigration and the border. Another tricky one to navigate there. And, of course, one of those areas where it's very easy to go to just the partisan lines. And this is where the decorum completely unraveled, of course, with Marjorie Taylor Greene heckling and shouting from the back row. The president was still trying to get on front foot there in terms of, hey, this is where we've been, this is where we need to go.
He was. I think he faces a very uphill battle in that respect, simply because of the number of migrants we're seeing at the southern border. That is just a political problem. It doesn't lend itself to the idea of a president who is in control of that situation. Now, the president has sought to move the political weight onto Republicans because, of course, there was that attempt at a border deal that sort of fell apart in the teeth of former President Trump's opposition.
Right.
President Biden was hitting that point strongly last night, but does it ultimately change the issue? I tend to think the issue itself is still a vulnerability for Biden.
Yeah, no question. And final thoughts. So now it is the day after. Everybody starts moving forward. What are you watching? What are you keeping your eye on the backside of the State of the Union address?
Well, obviously, I think it is telling that the president is in Pennsylvania today and will also be going to Georgia. We know, for better or for worse, that the November election is going to come down to maybe 6, maybe 7 states. And so he's making that effort now to try to win over voters there. But do we see the polls move either in those key battleground states or nationally? Or alternatively, are we at a point in our politics where a big event like the State of the Union, a very big tradition in American politics, is sort of losing its capacity to move the needle?
Yeah. Fantastic analysis, great writing, as always. Niall Stanage, senior staff writer and White House columnist for The Hill, thehill.com. You can check out his piece there today. Niall, as always, we appreciate you carving out time for us, and we look forward to having you back real soon.
Thanks, Boyd. Take care.
All right, again, that's Niall Standage, senior staff writer and White House columnist for The Hill. And as we look at all of that coming off of the State of the Union, it'll probably be like many State of the Union addresses by both Democrats and Republicans. After all is said and done, much more was said than is definitely going to get done, especially in an election year. But there is more that needs to be done. We'll talk about that a little more as we round out the show. Coming up next, stay with us. More on Inside Sources.
Wireless headphones. That'll be $200.
I'll use my Capital One Quicksilver card.
Now that's a hit. You used the Capital One Quicksilver card, which makes you the hero of every purchase. With Quicksilver, you earn unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase everywhere.
I wanted running music, but unlimited 1.5% cash back is pretty heroic.
Good instincts. Every hero needs a theme song. The Capital One Quicksilver card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A fiduciary has the regulatory obligation to put your best interest first. Trajan Wealth is a financial fiduciary for your investments. With Trajan Wealth, the more you make, the more we make. Our interests are aligned. Most other financial advisors are brokers held to a lesser standard and are paid an upfront commission to sell you something. Call Trajan Wealth
801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Hi, I'm Christine. 15 years ago, my world as a mom crumbled when my two sons finally were able to be honest about their substance addiction. My husband and I had been attending a 12-step addiction recovery program at our church to learn how to help our sons. We learned addiction is a life-threatening brain disease that's chronic, progressive, and has the capacity to take away free agency. I searched desperately to find the right help for our sons and was told to look for a strong aftercare program. By the grace of God, we found that with Renaissance Ranch and also found their amazing family program. Research studies indicate family members play a huge role in treatment outcome and long-term sobriety. Today, we are grateful owners of Renaissance Ranch with our sons and know addiction is a family illness, and families can find healing and connection when they are willing to learn more about recovery. If you have a loved one suffering from addiction, don't wait to seek help. Join us in our online Christ-centered family education classes that are open to the public at no charge. Look for us at renaissanceranch.com.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, pet parents! With Progressive's collision coverage, you get extra protection for your cat or dog, because there's nothing worse than seeing your pet hurt. Like when you see their face after accidentally stepping on their tail, and you say, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Pickles." But as you kiss his nose and rub his little belly welly, you know Mr. Pickles is thinking, "You betrayed me." Anywho, Progressive pays up to $1,000 in vet bills if your pet is injured in an auto accident. Learn more at Progressive.com and watch where you step. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Collision coverage subject to policy terms. Not available in all states.
This is what you've been waiting for. Well, I know some of you have. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and we don't usually experience a slow season, but when we do, it's this time of year when the weather's transitioning from winter to summer. You see, when the weather's mild, HVAC demand slows, but we still need calls for our technicians, and that's why we run our free furnace sale. Here's how it works. When you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free. You just pay the labor. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services by March 31st to schedule a free estimate with one of our HVAC supervisors. They'll explain all your options and exactly how much you can save on a new furnace and air conditioner. Again, when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free. You just pay the labor. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services today and schedule your free estimate. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Good morning. I'm the 40% off window company.
40% off? Of what?
Hey, 40% off.
Yeah, I'll bet it's your biggest sale of the year. This week only, because you need a model home in our neighborhood. Well, nothing. It's baloney. Hi, this is Kathy.
I'm Doug of Window World. When you hear those things, you know you've entered the baloney zone.
Resist the force of the baloney zone.
Find Window World online at windowworldutah.com.
Or call Window World at 281-8111. That's 281-8111.
And that's no baloney.
With 317,000 Utahns and 1 in 10 Utah kids facing hunger, Utah Food Bank needs your help to fight hunger statewide. In partnership with Macy's Grocery and Lynn's, fill a bag with non-perishable food donations and put it at your doorstep by 9 a.m. on Saturday, March 16th to support the Feed Utah food drive. Donations will be picked up by volunteers and can be the difference between hunger and hope for Utahns struggling to make ends meet and feed their families. Learn more about this statewide effort at utahfoodbank.org/feedutah.
I'm Jason Walton. In business, I mentor hundreds of Utahns as they pursue their American dream. The same dream career politicians treat with contempt. They send our money to our enemies abroad while shortchanging our veterans at home. It's not right. They're letting drug cartels escort criminals and terrorists across our border. It's time to stand up. So I'm running for the United States Senate. Stand with me. I'm Jason Walton, and I approve this message.
Paid for by friends of Jason Walton for Senate.
Looking for a secure retirement plan without market risk? Look no further. Lyle Boss, president of Boss Financial, specializes in no market risk retirement strategies with guarantees of principal, guaranteed growth, and lifelong income. Join Lyle right here each Saturday and Sunday for his Safe Money radio show, and call him now at 855-355-SAFE for your complimentary customized Safe Money information kit and Safe Money book. Nothing but upside here at 855-355-SAFE.
The life of a small business owner. Keeping the lights on, calling all the shots. And then there's workplace accidents. 500-degree ovens, rusty nails. Danger lurks around every corner. Workplace accidents can happen, but there is an easy way to keep your employees covered. Talk to your agent about workers' comp coverage from Pi, or go to piinsurance.com and get a quote. Safety first, then Pi Insurance. Individual rates, offerings, and savings may vary, subject to policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states and situations.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the huge piles of tumbleweeds that covered homes in Daybreak last weekend, mostly gone now. Second, the presidential primaries may be over at this point, but Utah still has to sort out candidates for the U.S. Senate. And third, the Pentagon says reports that children have been injured in Gaza by American aid packages falling from airplanes are not true. Right now, 37 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the show and round out the week, it's always an opportunity to step back a little bit. And as you all know, I love to learn. I love to be challenged in my thinking. I love to explore new ways of looking at old things and old ways at looking at some of the things that are right in front of us today. And really had a tremendous opportunity to do that yesterday, spending time down at the Wheatley Institute on the campus of Brigham Young University with Robbie George, Professor Robert P. George from Princeton University, one of the great thinkers and moral voices of our time. And he delivered an address last night that you should go check out online as well, talking about the Constitution and civic virtue and why those virtues are so important to all of us. And sometimes when we think of those virtues, we think of things, relating to faith or religion. And it is that and so much more. Robbie George talked about all of this in terms of the context that businesses, governments, communities are all dependent on people with values and virtue, showing up to work, making a difference in the community. And so he talked about these little platoons of civil society that institutions rely on virtuous people. Of course, we know John Adams said that the Constitution was built for a moral and religious society, that kind of people. He talked about how those institutions, again, including government, including businesses of all kinds, that they rely on virtuous people, but they cannot produce them. And where do they get produced? They get produced by civil society. And yes, it takes a village. The village is not the government. And Robbie George led just a fantastic discussion around all of those, and really what he tries to do as he teaches his students at Princeton. He talked about being a disciplined seeker of truth and a courageous speaker of truth. We need more of that in our country and in our society today. And it's one of those moments where I got to see not just someone talk about principles, but to live them and to show them. So I went down there yesterday morning prior to Inside Sources so we could film this interview that will air Sunday morning on KSL5 TV. And as we went down there, we were just having a conversation, and as is often the case when you're doing these kinds of interviews, it's the hallway conversations or the pre-conversations where you find out a whole lot. And I found out that Robbie George's father, who's 98, was not doing well, and they didn't expect him to live much longer. But that he was determined to keep the commitment he had made to the Wheatley Institute at BYU to deliver an address last night as promised, and that he would then catch a midnight flight to get back east and back to where his father is in West Virginia. And that just struck me so powerfully. Then he went on to talk about his father and shared some amazing stories about what he observed in his dad about living principles, things he never had to talk about, never had to describe as a virtue or a principle because his dad just lived it. And we'll share some of those on Sunday edition coming up. But I thought in the context of that, and found out just moments ago that Robbie George did make it back to West Virginia, was there with his father as he passed away this afternoon at the age of 98. And he not only lived a great life and left a great legacy, but I got to watch that legacy live on in the way his son, Robbie George, conducted himself, rose to a tough situation. Endings are hard. But endings matter. And I think the fact that Robbie George came here to Utah to share an important message for all of us to think through in the context of his family situation and then making it back with a midnight flight in order to be there with his father at his passing, I thought was exactly what living up to those principles you profess to believe actually looks like and sounds like. And so it was an extraordinary evening last night and so many different principles. But I want to go back to this two-pronged approach that Robbie George tries to instill in young people all across the country and all around the world. And that is, as it relates to truth, we have to be disciplined seekers of truth. So we can't just accept the surface. We can't just accept what pops up in our social media feed. We can't just accept what is delivered to us, whether that's coming from a church or a synagogue, whether that's coming from social media, whether that's coming from an elected official, someone in a government office, a boss, a friend, that we have to be willing to do the hard work, the disciplined work of being a seeker of truth. And once you live that kind of life as a disciplined and determined seeker of truth, then it gets harder, not easier. The harder part is then to become a courageous speaker of truth. And we've talked about that many times on this show, that it's easy to spew talking points and pejoratives at your enemies and those that you're against. But do you have that courage to speak truth